Welcome to our presentation, THC, We'd Like You to Know, by the Grassroots Movement.
Marijuana was not banned due to scientific, medical, or government hearings. Instead, reasons such as racism, fear, greed, protection of corporate profits, corrupt legislators, and personal career advancements were the leading causes of its prohibition. The first uses of marijuana dates as far back as 17,000 BC and was legal as recently as when Ronald Reagan was a boy. The marijuana plant, hemp, was introduced to the United States around the early 1600s, but the issue went unnoticed until the early 1900s. The first law relating to marijuana arose in Jamestown Colony, Virginia in 1619, requiring farmers to grow hemp during the times of shortages. Also, people could pay their taxes with hemp. The United States Census of 1850 counted 8,327 hemp plantations, which were grown to make things such as clothing and canvas. The first hemp-related problem occurred in the early 1900s when tensions developed between owners of small farms and large farms that used cheap Mexican labor. The Mexican workers smoked marijuana, and when the Great Depression hit, jobs and resources became scarce. California passed the first state law outlawing marijuana. Others believed that the cheap Mexican workforce wasn't the only problem. Mormons who traveled to Mexico in the early 1900s came back with marijuana, which left a poor reputation on it. After the first marijuana banning law arose in California, other states began to target Mexican-American populations by outlawing marijuana. During the Prohibition era, the desire to outlaw alcohol was extremely noticeable, but laws relating to drugs were passed without the general public's knowledge. Because drugs cannot be outlawed at a federal level, the decision to tax it was made. For example, the Harrison Act was passed, which provided federal tax penalties for opiates and cocaine. Harry J. Anslinger worked to make marijuana illegal at a federal level. Anslinger used yellow journalism, including specific themes such as racism and violence, to gain national attention. Anslinger, with the help of William Hearst, who owned many newspaper companies, collaborated to make marijuana illegal. Hearst wanted to get rid of marijuana because first, he hated Mexicans related to this drug. Second, he wanted to get rid of hemp because it would reduce competition. Third, by writing lies about Mexicans in his newspaper, he was able to make a big profit. The DuPont Chemical Company and other pharmaceutical companies joined the effort to ban cannabis. Because cannabis could be used for medicinal purposes, pharmaceutical companies wanted people to buy from their stores and not grow cannabis themselves. After passing the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, marijuana officially became illegal at the federal level.
Marijuana holds great potential in the medical field. Numerous studies have shown that the usage of cannabis ameliorated nausea, vomiting, stimulation of hunger by the patients undergoing chemotherapy, and AIDS patients. It also lowered the intraocular eye pressure when treating glaucoma, a disease that could potentially result in blindness. It has antibacterial effects, effective in treating gastrointestinal illnesses. The primary medical potential of cannabis holds in alleviating chronic pain for patients. Lester Greenspoon, MD, Emeritus Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, wrote that cannabis is more useful, less toxic, less expensive than the conventional medicines prescribed for diverse syndromes and symptoms, including Crohn's disease, migraine headaches, severe nausea and vomiting, convulsive disorders, and AIDS, etc. Currently, it is legal under the Virginian legislation to use cannabis on an extremely restricted basis for medical usage and distribution for cancer and glaucoma. The short-term medical effects are well known, while the long-term medical effects are not as well known. We would like to inform you of the current researches on the beneficial short-term effects of the usage of cannabis, thus encourage the exploration of the medical potential on the long term. For example, a research from the Canadian Medical Association Journal stated that the usage of inhaled cannabis on spasticity, a condition characterized by the stiffening of muscles that could impair movement and speech, yielded a beneficial effect among patients receiving insufficient relief from traditional treatments. A drug that is currently used that functions similarly to marijuana is Marinol. The researchers from George Washington Pharmaceutical stated in the 2001 issue of the Journal of Cannabis Therapeutic that in practice, it has been found that extracts of cannabis provide greater relief of pain than the equivalent amount of cannabinoid given as a single chemical entity such as Marinol. The oral route of administration for cannabinoids, specifically Marinol, led to slow and irregular absorption, inefficient for the treatment of the pain of the patients. Marijuana displays its superiority over marijuana in the costs as well. Compared to the approximate $17 per gram cost of marijuana, 1 gram of marijuana costs around $1,810. Not only does marijuana hold a greater advantage in treatment, but also cost effectiveness and affordability for patients suffering from chronic pain. Government Accountability Office noted that this drug could be used to treat patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease, anorexia, AIDS, arthritis, cancer, Crohn's disease, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV, etc. Clearly, a legalized medical marijuana would greatly benefit numerous patients suffering from various deadly diseases. A drug that has these great short-term effects deserves to have its long-term effects explored. Just because of the fact that there are people abusing the substance for recreational use should not deter this potential medicine from reaching out to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of patients and alleviating their pain, from making their painful treatment procedure a much smoother and a convenient one.
Marijuana provides a new frontier for tax revenues for the federal and state governments. By legalizing cannabis, governments can tax it and regulate it. A 2010 study from the Cato Institute claims that legalizing marijuana would generate $8.7 billion in federal and state tax revenue annually. Marijuana is not only a new source of revenue, but also another way to reclaim old revenue wasted in the costly drug war. The state of Washington estimates that it can generate as much as $1.9 billion in revenue over 5 years due to the legalization of marijuana. This comes from the reduction of regulations and agencies designed to prohibit the use of marijuana. More than 300 economists, including 3 Nobel laureates, have signed a petition calling attention to the findings of a paper by Harvard economist Jeffrey Miron. This paper suggests that if the government legalized marijuana, it would save $7.7 billion annually by not having to enforce the current prohibition on the drug. The report added that legalization would save an additional $6 billion per year if the government taxed marijuana at rates similar to alcohol and tobacco.
Currently, 18 out of 50 states have recognized marijuana's potential and legalized it for medical purposes. Don't be afraid to become part of the grassroots movement towards further legalizing medical marijuana to help patients.
We are not asking viewers for immediate agreement with our affirmation that marijuana is medically useful, but we hope that they will do more to encourage open and legal exploration of its potential. In addition, we would like to open the eyes of the viewers to the potential economic profits yielded from the legalization of cannabis. Thank you for your time. This has been the Grassroots Movement.